Okay, this evening on the bench we're going to have a look at this RVC-240 CB radio from the sort of like the 80s when CB radios were very popular in the UK. This was the FM only. We weren't legally allowed to use AM or single sideband sets until I think late 90s. I think and that's basically when the craze has basically worn off now, and most people have sort of like moved on to amateur radios or had their mobile phones, didn't need sort of things like this anymore. Picked this up on eBay, fairly cheap, and it was in pretty mucky condition. I've cleaned the front panel up, it's cleaned up quite well. And just going to look at it this evening just to see what sort of condition it's in, see if it's been twiddled with or anyone's been inside and it's been modified in any way, see if it works basically. I had one of these when I was younger, but I think it was a 230 or the 220, I'm not sure which model it was, but it was a much more basic layout, just had the volume and squelch, and a couple of other controls. It had a tone control, I think, and it possibly had channel 9 and the low power. I remember it had the low power setting for 0.4 watts, and the channel 9 switch, and the PA or CB option for deciding if you want to use it as a PA system or a CB radio. It was a nice set, and I don't know whatever happened to it. I think I probably sold it or gave it away to someone or took it apart for spares, I can't remember. So I thought I'd pick up another one and have a look just to see if anything's on amateur CB radio still, and see if it's worth doing anything with. Now, no idea if it works or not. As I say, it's bought for spares or repair, and top panels are pretty murky condition. It's been sort of like it's been kicking around in someone's car, and it's sort of like a bit it's been scratched and a bit of touch of rust on the top, and the same on the bottom. The bottom panel's a little bit corroded as well, but the front panel looks okay, and that's the most important thing, because that's the bit you're going to see if it's in a vehicle or if you've got it on your bench. So the thing this evening to do is basically I'm going to power it up, see if the receive section works. I'm going to check it on the signal generator. And then once I get a power meter and a dummy load, we can check to see if the output power is okay and it's running on frequency. I can actually run the set on low power with my Marconi 2305, because that has a 1 watt power capability and it's 50 ohm terminated, so I should be able to tell if it's transmitting on the right frequency and check things like deviation and things like that. So we can do basic checks this evening just to see if it's working at all, to be honest with you, and no one's been inside. There was a craze in the 80s of all the sort of like, someone got inside one of these and started twiddling around with pots and things and saw that the meter went right up when you were transmitting and thought, oh, that must be power output. So all the kids were in there with their screwdrivers turning these pots fully clockwise to get maximum power out of their sets, and all they were doing was turning the gain up of the meter, and it didn't actually affect the output power of the set at all. To increase the power of the sets, you had to actually modify the components. There is a sort of like a alignment stage that you go through in the service manual that allows you to make sure the front ends align properly. You get the best response out of the set you can. But short of that, you're not going to get much more than about 3.5–4 watts out of one of these. If you want more than that, I suggest they used to what they called a burner or a linear, which was basically an RF amplifier. But not interested in anything with that. There's no one's really using CB radio now. I'm going to chuck a mag mount on the roof of the garage and see if we can pick anything up. But for the first thing I'm going to do is just see if this thing actually does do anything at all. Because if it's totally dead and burnt out, I'm not going to bother with it. It's not worth the problem. So, got an audio line microphone that comes with it that looked exactly the same from what I remember as the Rotel. Just selected your name on the front. Obviously, push to talk switch here. Had a little clip on the back that used to hang on the dashboard when you were going along. Volume control, squelch, obviously RF gain, which is actually RF attenuator. Mic gain, which is deviation, basically input to the preamplifier, so it allows you to turn the mic gain down, which no one ever used. Everyone had their gain turned right up, and everyone used to over-modulate, so you had all this sort of bleed through on the other channels. So basically that reduced your deviation from your center frequency. Adjustable dimmer display, which was quite nice. We've got a delta tune here, which is if you're listening into a station that sounded like it was off frequency, you could shift the frequency very slightly. I think it's about 5 or 10 kilohertz, just to pull them in and maybe get a slightly better resolution on the signal. CB or radio, CB or PA, public address system, or CB radio. Clear and normal, not totally sure. I think that's a notch filter or bandpass filter for the microphone audio, so it actually gave you a sort of like a more of a very narrow bandwidth. Made it slightly easier to hear, for the other person to hear what you were saying if you had a really noisy signal. Emergency channel 9, which was in those days, I'm not sure if it still is emergency channel 9. You press that to channel 9, rather than dialing through to channel 9, you could just press that and it goes to channel 9, and you could call for assistance. That was the idea of that. So that's an emergency channel, really. Normal and minus 10 dB, that's 4 watts and 0.4 watts. Okay, so that's straightforward, that's output power. And high and low tone, which the switch is broken on that, but that's audio tone for the speaker inside, so that's not the transmitted tone, but what you hear back on the audio side. So it's in, front panel's in pretty nice condition. All the switches seem to work apart from the tone control. So basically it's connected up to the supply. I've got it into it's quite 14.2 volts input, which is unusual because most automotive stuff goes up to 14.8. So we're running about 14.2 anyway. It should be fairly well regulated anyway, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. So we'll turn it on and see if it does anything. And the first sign is no. That's because my connection's come off the back. Okay, there we go. We've got something on the front panel. Channel 15's come up, as you can see. Not particularly bright display. Tone control doesn't do anything as I suggested. The display comes up, and that's all appears to be okay. Now, as I said, I'm waiting for a SWR meter and power meter to arrive. Until it does, I can't really transmit full power, but I can do a few other checks at low power, just to make sure that everything's working on frequency. So I think the first thing I'll do is I'll go through and try and find out what the frequencies are for each channel. I picked up the Marconi signal generator, not the Rosen Schwartz, by the way, Codies. I'm going to use the Marconi. Type in the frequency and see what sort of signal strength we get on the meter, and then shift the tune plus and minus and just see if it seems to be on channel. So then we get that set up and we'll see what we get. Right, I'm set to channel 20, and channel 20's frequency is 27.79125 megs, apparently. So I've set the signal generator to inject into the front end of the radio. We're going in at minus 93 dBm, so it's a pretty low signal, but not as low as it should be, but should be a strong enough signal to pick it up clearly. Now in theory, if I press the RF amplifier on, we should hear something, we should hear a tone. We do. I don't know if you can see on the signal strength meter. Let's zoom in a bit. I'm going to try and find a point where you can get a focus lock. Okay, so we got a +5 signal on there, so that looks pretty good. I'm just going to delta tune it, see if that makes any difference. And if you notice there, if I shift it plus, it drops back slightly, and minus, it's back slightly as well. So that suggests that the RF section is pretty well in line. Probably not perfect, but it's certainly good enough. The Marconi I know is in pretty good state of affairs, and it's more or less smack on frequency. So that appears to be working absolutely fine on the RF section. So it's receiving, looks like the receiving channel is working okay, and the alignment's probably pretty good. It's clearly picking up fairly well here. Let's drop back the RF level a bit. We're just watching. So it's a S3 signal at minus 110 dBm. So I think that's probably within spec. I'd have to check the specs of the set, but it certainly looks like it's the receiver side of it's working very well. So I think what we'll do is we'll do a low power test on transmit. Now in theory, it should be transmitting exactly the same frequency, 27.79125. So let me get that sorted out, and I'll let you know what we get with that. Right, so what I've done here is I've connected up the output of the transmitter in low powered mode to the input of this HP signal generator via 50 ohm terminator and pad. So all we're interested in at the moment is just seeing if we're getting the 27.79125 megahertz that we got on receive, and give us a rough idea what our alignment is. So if I transmit 27.7908, so it's actually transmitting fractionally low. Not badly out of line, I don't think, but it is transmitting slightly out of slightly too low frequency. So that's going to need to be looked at. At this point here, this I think will end this first part of the video, just to have a look and see if the sort of set's roughly in alignment, and it clearly hasn't been molested. It all looks like it's working pretty well. It's going to need a bit of alignment, which is what I was hoping, because that's what I bought it for, really, to get my screwdrivers in there and have a bit of a twiddle. But it's in, as you can see, it's in clearly working order, working at roughly the right frequency. So for the time being, that'll be it. I'm going to wait for the standing wave ratio meter to turn up and the dummy load, so I can transmit at full power, and then we'll run through with a proper calibration of the front end and all the tuning circuits, and get this thing as best as we can. Though it's probably within spec now, let's get it as good as we can.